Alright, hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we'll be covering the major events that have occurred over the past day in different conflicts around the world. So let's start off with Ukraine. Let's go to the Pokrovsk direction where there's quite a bit to cover. So in the city of Selydove, Russian forces have begun their second phase of offensive operations. Reports emerged yesterday by local Ukrainian sources stating that Russian infantry had begun attacking in small groups into the eastern outskirts of the city. Geolocated footage then emerged showing Russian forces in control of the mine south of the Turikon, so this mine right here, which also indicates that they control the reinforced concrete plant further east. Russian forces then reportedly built on their momentum and captured Myrna Street and entered the eastern houses of Lysychanska Street, taking up positions there. Here it appears that either two things have happened. One, the Russians are attempting to consolidate their positions in the eastern houses, likely while under fire from Ukrainian forces across the street, or two, stiff Ukrainian resistance has stopped the Russians from advancing. Now I'm more inclined to believe that the first option is true, due to the fact that there are reports that Ukrainian supplies into the city are incredibly limited. There are also reports that drones are dropping supplies into the city, and while this claim is unconfirmed, if true, it would indicate a deteriorating situation on the flanks. Russian forces are reportedly moving in small squad-sized groups of infantry inside Selydove, forcing Ukrainian artillery to spread out and waste their shells on less important targets. Additionally, it is more difficult to use drones here due to the overextension of the Ukrainian army around the Pokrovsk Bulge, which in turn overextends drone companies, which are already limited due to some reportedly being redeployed to Kursk Oblast. Looking at the situation on the flanks, on the southern flank of Selydove, Russian forces have likely advanced along the windbreaks on either side of the railway line, advancing up here, using the trees as cover from the Ukrainian artillery and FPV drones. Some reports went as far to state that Russian forces had entered the key village of Vishneve, with assault operations ongoing inside the village and clashes breaking out. This is unconfirmed though. On the northern flank, Russian forces reportedly seized 4 more tree lines over here, and are now apparently within small arms fire range of the intersection with the E50 and M30 highways. Looking at the situation further north, Russian forces appear to have restarted offensive operations in a new direction. Geolocated footage indicates that Russian forces advanced in the direction of Vozhdy Vizhenka and captured the agricultural buildings on the southeastern outskirts of the village. This village is strategically important as it lies right outside the Pokrovsk to Kostiantynivka highway, which runs along here, which is a key logistical route for Ukraine. Russian forces also advanced up this tree line here, capturing the rest of it, which they failed to do so after the Battle of Novoalexandrivka. Now let's move to the Kupiansk direction, where there is some new news. Geolocated footage indicates the Russian forces have advanced and reached the Oskil River, physically cutting the Ukrainian bridgehead here into 2 pieces. This was done with 2 mechanized assaults. The first was a combined push with at least 7 tanks and BMPs. They spearheaded the advance, heading southwest through Krytakivka, reaching the Oskil River, where infantry likely dismounted and took up positions. The second mechanized assault was conducted shortly afterwards with the goal of widening the spearhead. 4 tanks and armoured vehicles and 1 armoured personnel carrier advanced to the eastern part of the village. Infantry dismounted from the armoured personnel carrier, who attempted to take up positions in the northern residential area. The other vehicles then spearheaded and advanced down the main road, reaching the intersection between the R79 highway and the main road. Additionally, one source reported that Russian forces advanced into the southeastern outskirts of Kostyantynivka. This could either mean 2 things. 1, they were able to cross the Pishychana River and advance into it from there, or 2, they restarted assault operations along the tactical heights from the forested area here and advanced into the village from the east. Moving further north, recent reliable reports from multiple sources suggest that Russian forces have likely advanced west of Sinkivka in the forests here. This advance was likely relatively easy for them due to the original spearhead to Petropavlivka, which facilitated this advance and protected their eastern flank. Their western flank wasn't under much threat either, as only small groupings of Ukrainian troops with their backs against the Oskil River were stationed there. It is likely, in my opinion, that this area is now in a grey zone. Moving to the South Donetsk front and the Kharkov direction, reliable reports from both Ukrainian and Russian sources suggest that Russian forces have advanced deeper into the city of Hernik and have captured new positions on Chigalovo Street, Donetsk Street, Frunze Street and Chapayeva Street. Some reports by Russian sources state that they were able to advance into the western suburbs of the city, breaking through to Repin Street, while simultaneously advancing in the eastern part of the city to Zhukovskoho Street, capturing 3 high-rise buildings in the process. A Ukrainian source reported that the fate of the Hernik to Kurahavka direction has been decided in Zoryane, Izmailivka, and Alexandropol. So Zoryane is here, Alexandropol is here, and Izmailivka is here. These are all on the front line, right in front of these 2 important towns. All 3 villages are now under strong pressure, and Russia is actively using aviation and erasing the fortifications with FABs. In Karakhove, geolocated footage indicates that Russian forces advanced into the eastern dachas of the city, raising their flag over the easternmost buildings. There were also reports that they were able to capture 2 more tree lines southwest of Maximilianivka. In Toretsk, geolocated footage indicates that Russian forces continue to advance in the central part of the city and have entrenched themselves in the central park. Moving to Kursk Oblast, not really many changes. There was a Ukrainian advance up near Cherkasaya Poroshnaya. However, this is likely old. It was probably done by advancing up this highway here and branching off into these forested areas, if I had to guess. But like I said, this advance is likely old, considering the stalling of pretty much all Ukrainian offensive operations here. There was also reports that Russian forces recaptured the village of Kolmakov over here, which is just southeast of Sudzha, although that is not being confirmed yet. In the Liman direction, recent reports from reliable sources suggest that Russian forces have advanced in the Torsky direction and have taken up positions in these eastern farms. Assault operations are reportedly ongoing in the first houses of the settlement. And that's all the frontline changes over the past 24 hours. Meanwhile, looking at Russian missile strikes, a Russian missile struck the industrial zone of Slovyansk in Donetsk Oblast. 3 explosions were reported, private houses were damaged, but there were no casualties. A Russian ballistic missile struck the city of Kryvyi Rih in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. 4 people were injured, a hotel, 5 high-rise buildings, a cultural facility, a bank, 2 shops, and 14 cars were damaged. A Russian missile was launched at the port area of Odessa. A strong fire broke out as a result, and it was reportedly targeting a ship carrying military equipment, although that claim has not been confirmed. A Russian Iskander missile struck Zaporizhia city. Explosions were reported, and no official information has been released yet, as it happened literally like an hour ago as of the time of recording. 4 Russian KGB glide bombs struck Kharkiv overnight. 7 people were wounded, 4 of which were hospitalized. 2 houses were destroyed and 10 others damaged as a result. Power outages were also reported in certain areas of the city. Another Russian Gerin drone attack was carried out overnight from 2 directions. Drones were launched from Kursk and Primorsko-Akhtarsk. They primarily attacked Kyiv, but some of them flew past the city, with one of them going as far as Rivne. A Ukrainian drone struck the Selydove explosives factory in Oryol Oblast. It is reported that 110 drones were launched by Ukraine in one of their largest attacks on Russia since the beginning of the war. The vast majority of these drones were shot down by Russian air defense. Today, Ukrainian drones targeted Rostov, Bryansk, Oryol, Belgorod, and Kursk oblasts. No damage was reported, and the Russian Ministry of Defense claimed that it shot down 18 UAVs. In other news, new footage has surfaced which appears to show a Russian Gerin 2 drone fitted with a camera. This is the first footage of its kind. Its presence was partially confirmed recently through a leak to the media. If the use of this is confirmed in the near future by other sources, then in the future we can expect objective control footage of the landings. Initially, Gerin drones used a satellite and inertial guidance system. Later they were modernized and equipped with jam-proof GLONASS antenna, which increased the accuracy of guidance. Now it seems the drone can be controlled by an operator. One source stated that it's possible that only the leading drone in the group of drones is equipped with such a modification. Meanwhile, Ukraine is developing a new drone capable of intercepting Russian Gerin 2 drones known as the Sting. It can fly at speeds of over 160 km per hour and at altitudes of up to 3 km. The drone operator will control it through VR glasses. In the future, Ukraine plans to add an artificial intelligence system for automatic targeting. The Sting will reportedly cost 10 times less than a Gerin drone. A Gerin drone reportedly costs around $50,000, meaning that a Sting would cost roughly $5,000. And here is some of the footage of the test flights, if it will load. Here we go. So it's pretty fast, as you can see. This is what it looks like. Almost looks a little bit like a Lancet drone, you know, with the 4 wings coming out. The US Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin arrived in Kyiv on an unannounced visit. He's going to hold talks with Zelensky and Ukrainian Defense Minister Umarov. They're reportedly going to discuss Ukraine's weapons needs and how the US can continue to support the Ukrainian military over the next year. Moving to the situation in the Middle East, let's go to the situation on the border between Israel and Lebanon. So Israeli forces renewed their airstrikes on the southern suburbs of Beirut, as we can see in this video here. An entire apartment block was flattened after an Israeli airstrike struck it. The IDF claimed that it was targeting Hezbollah's financial arm known as Al-Qad al-Hassan, as well as, quote, large number of targets in Beirut and elsewhere. An IDF official claimed that the Al-Qad al-Hassan is a Hezbollah unit that is used to pay their operatives and help buy arms, although it is also known to be used by ordinary Lebanese civilians. Israeli drone strikes also targeted the Bekaa Valley in northeastern Lebanon. Bekaa is known to be a Hezbollah stronghold, although Israel has also struck civilian targets here. Baalbek, which is the largest city in Bekaa, was also targeted, but this time with drones. 6 people were killed and 7 others wounded as a result. Multiple people were killed and wounded after an Israeli airstrike targeted an ambulance in the city of Tyre in southern Lebanon. Hezbollah announced the downing of an Israeli Hermes 900 drone. They had previously only been able to down the Hermes 450 drone, but if this report is true, it would indicate a significant issue for the Israelis, as if Hezbollah is able to knock out their more advanced technology, it decreases their options for drone warfare and reconnaissance. Hezbollah launched a barrage of rockets at the northern Israeli city of Haifa. All the rockets appear to have been intercepted. Israel likely moved their air defense from the Safed to Kiryat Shimona area to the Haifa area in recent months, increasing their capabilities in this direction. Hezbollah probably knows this and is purposefully targeting these cities with a larger barrage of rockets in order to overload Israel's significant air defense in this area. And additionally, Hezbollah launched a barrage of rockets at the northern city of Safed. They all appear to have fallen open areas, however. Moving to the situation in the Gaza Strip, we'll move north to south. In northern Gaza, the commander of the 401st Armored Brigade of the Israeli Army was killed earlier today during operations in Gaza after walking into an explosive trap set by the Al-Qassam brigades. He is one of the highest ranking officers to have died in the fighting in the Gaza Strip. Another officer was also seriously injured in the same incident. The Al-Qassam brigades also reportedly targeted an Israeli Merkava tank with a Yasin 105 missile near the civil defense area west of the Jabalia refugee camp, and they also targeted a Namur armored personnel carrier with a Tundam missile west of the Jabalia camp in the northern part of the Strip. The Al-Aqsa Martyrs brigades reportedly targeted a grouping of Israeli troops stationed around the civil administration building east of the Jabalia refugee camp. 2 people were killed and an unknown number wounded after Israeli shelling targeted the Safdawi area in northern Gaza. 2 people were killed after Israeli artillery shells struck the Al-Fallujah area of the Jabalia refugee camp. 2 Israeli soldiers were wounded or killed after Al-Qassam fighters sniped them in the Jabalia refugee camp. In the Gaza City area, the Mustafa brigades, in cooperation with the Salag al-Din brigades, reportedly bombed Israeli troop concentrations in the Netzarim corridor with rockets. The Al-Qassam brigades also reportedly destroyed an Israeli armored personnel carrier with a Shawaz EFP in the northwestern Gaza City. 4 people were killed and multiple others injured after an Israeli missile struck the vicinity of a mosque in the Tufar neighborhood of Gaza City. In the Deir al-Balah governorate, Israeli armored vehicles conducted an incursion into the Al Bureij camp. They were likely originally stationed over here and probably moved down this road based on reports by local sources, and reached the Martyrs roundabout where they fired at multiple buildings before likely withdrawing. In the Khan Yunis governorate, 2 people were killed and 8 others wounded after an Israeli airstrike targeted a tent in the Al Mawasi humanitarian zone west of Khan Yunis city. And in Rafah, 5 people were killed as a result of Israeli shelling of central and northern Rafah. 3 people were also killed after Israeli shelling targeted the Rimas hill in Rafah, and 2 people were also killed as a result of an Israeli drone attack in the Araba area north of Rafah city. In the West Bank, it's been relatively quiet, except for clashes that broke out between Palestinian fighters and Israeli forces during a raid on the town of Beit Farik, east of the city of Nablus. The Palestinian Red Crescent Society stated that 3 children were hospitalized as a result. In other news, a second US THAAD air defense system reportedly arrived in Israel today. The THAAD air defense system is one of the US military's most powerful anti-missile weapons, capable of intercepting ballistic missiles at ranges of 150 to 200 kilometers, and with a near-perfect success rate in testing. Now, there's no news in Sudan, which there usually is news, so that's kind of odd, but let's move to the situation in Syria. Members of ISIS carried out an attack with medium and heavy weapons on a group affiliated with the Russia-backed Liwa al-Quds in the Homs Desert. The attack coincided with violent clashes between both sides. As a result, one member of Liwa al-Quds was killed and 2 military vehicles were destroyed. A machine gun owned by ISIS was also destroyed. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights released a report stating that, quote, "It is worth noting that the group's members, who arrived in the area as a part of military reinforcements sent by regime forces and their proxies to the Syrian desert to start combing operations and pursue members of ISIS cells who had escalated their attacks, disregarding military campaigns and Russian airstrikes that had failed so far to weaken ISIS members or reduce their capabilities." Interestingly, in other areas of Syria, there were no artillery or airstrikes reported across the entire country over the past 24 hours. At least nothing that I've heard from my sources. There were some drone attacks around Aleppo, though. Oh, by the way, this map was made by Syriac Maps. I forgot to say that. Link will be in the description below. And finally, in Myanmar, in the Shan state, there are reports that junta forces have begun a counteroffensive in the direction of the TNLA-held town of Nong Keo, so that direction to the northeast. Heavy fighting is reported in the area of the On Ma Thi village, and intense battles continue to the east in Tuang Hikam, which is just over here, in the salient kind of area. One reliable source stated that there is a strong sense that these could be decisive battles of the war, with the junta's success turning back the tide of the North Shan campaign, while a TNLA victory could leave the way open towards Pien O Luin and Mandalay. And meanwhile, in the Kachin state, positional fighting continued at the besieged Battalion 1003 base near Kan Paik T. Anyways, that is it for all the news and different conflicts around the world over the past 24 hours. If you did enjoy, consider dropping a like and subscribing. I'm not here to force you, but it does help with the channel more than you'd expect. Follow me on my Twitter if you haven't already. My Telegram will also be below in the description. And my map, my Ukraine and Middle East map, you can find it in the pinned tweet on my Twitter. Go check that out if you're interested. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I'll see you all tomorrow in another update. Goodbye.